Now let's get into it on the other side.
Good evening. Welcome back to On the Other Side, Leadership After Transition. I'm Jeffrey Lodick. As always, hey, this is a place where we bring real people that have real experiences regarding the transition into real life, right? From the military to the civilian world. And look, I'm not telling you how to transition. That's not my job in life. It's to bring you guys real stories to ease your transition worries, concerns, and answer some questions that you may have in regards to the transition process. Hey, listen, before we get started in bringing our guests, I just want to put it out there that, look, there's a lot of podcasts that are out there regarding transition. Your Next Mission, the Jack Tilley, Sergeant Major of the Army, 12th, one each, his podcast is killing it. Mike Abrams, the 4 Block podcast. If you're a transitioning service member, check that out. Hey, listen, isn't that interesting how me, a transitioning podcast, gives you other transitioning podcasts to listen to? Well, there's a reason for that. It's because it's collaboration. And oh, by the way, the information I may provide might not be as good as the information they provide, but at the end of the day, it's information nonetheless that you may or may not use. So by all means, use them. Check them out. They're on every podcast player, by the way, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, you name it, they're there. Hey, I'm really excited to bring on my next guest. I'm gonna do something that she doesn't know because I'm kind of like that. I'm gonna play a video in a minute, but I want to tell you, I had her on before. She is my second time person, right? So I brought her back. So we're not going to go over the whole transition journey. We will bring up some other things in which she's done. I got to tell you, there's some amazing things that I learned about Charlynda Scales years ago, and I've continued to watch as she's grown and done great things. But look, she went to an ACC school. We won't hold that against her. Clemson, it is what it is. She was an athlete there, and she did great things. Listen, she's like a rocket scientist. She's not really, but aeronautical something or another. I'm not that person. Master's degree, business strategy, leadership strategy, that stuff. She's smart as hell. Listen, Air Force major. And she just has done some amazing things. Active duty wise, she opened Mutt Sauce, which is her thing. And I can't wait to talk about it. But I'll tell you, what's interesting is how she's done it. I'm not going to get into her personal life, and I won't ask her to bring in her personal life to it, but a person who was serving active duty, going through some things, running a business, being a great officer, transitioned. Not only was she a government contractor, she was a GS civilian. She's done everything, and she continues to do it through mentorship programs. She works with 4 Block, Bunker Labs. Listen, I don't think there's an organization that I can say that she isn't part of. SCORE. By the way, the one thing that I find to be truly amazing about Charlynda Scales is that no matter what her surroundings are, whether it's reading to the Girl Scouts or to school-age kids, or she's with a group of country folk from Ohio, or it doesn't matter where she's from. She is comfortable. She's who she is. She's real. She's raw. She's genuine. And she's just an amazing person. And you'll never see her change who she is. And for that is why I'm bringing her back on. But we're going to talk about some business. We're going to get into some good conversation. But before we do, let me just throw this out there just to kind of give you a glimpse.
When you've been pushing yourself as far as you know you can go, and you know that there's still more that you can do, and to get a call and basically have someone say, "We believe in you." I think it just, for me, was the release. I had that cathartic moment. The caliber of applicants was high. It was high just because it was veterans. And so even to be amongst that group of applicants was humbling and speechless that I was one of the 3. My grandfather did make this sauce. It was never a company when he made it. He would just make it for friends and for gatherings of family. He passed away in 2005. And he told my mother to give me something after he passed away. And when she opened up the envelope, she realized that he had handed me the original recipe, which nobody knew how to make it. So for me, it was more than just handing me a piece of paper. I felt an obligation to do something with it. The best I can do is to share this with everyone and to put his life story on the bottle so everyone will know about his passion for creating this product. And so it's called Mutt sauce because that was his call sign in Korea and Vietnam was Mutt. They said it could blend in anywhere. For me, the journey of being an entrepreneur has been one of humility and of self-discovery, because I've learned a lot along this journey, and of servitude. And to see how far that it has taken me, people that I've met on this journey, I am so grateful. I just feel overwhelmingly blessed.
Now, that's a pretty cool video, right? I mean, I got to tell you, it's an awesome video. But what I find to be amazing, not only that video, I listen to people talk about how they have to be in the right places at the right time. They're really lucky to do this. But it's really interesting because if you ever follow Charlynda, she's not lucky. She puts herself in places that she's supposed to be in. I mean, she's talking to Damon John. I don't know how many of y'all know Damon John. Me and him have never had a conversation. I've known him for many, many years before he was on the Guy Raz, before, Fubu was like a brand new thing. But you look at this guy who is just, he's killing it. He's on Shark Tank and all these other places, right? But she's talking to him. And, oh, by the way, she's in the crowd. And I see this video, and I don't even think she shared it, but she's talking to Gary Vee. And I'm like, yo, who talks to Gary Vee? But she's everywhere. But she's so humble, and it's just wonderful. So without further ado, because I can sit here and talk about her all day long, I'm going to bring her on. But I got to figure out what button's the applause button on this thing I use. There she is. Charlynda Scales. Hey, welcome.
Hey, Jeffrey. Hi.
How are you?
Oh man, I feel blessed. I'm glad to be here.
You know what's interesting? So back in 2019, I listened to our podcast that you had actually sent me just a reminiscent memory type thing, and it was 2 years ago. I mean, almost not to the day. I think it was early in January. I mean, a little earlier than this, but it was back in 2019, and I wouldn't have had you come back on. But you've been from that moment to right now. Things have shifted for you. There's been a lot of things that you've been doing. You had a son, and I'm sure that addition, although beautiful and wonderful, has made it very much easier for you to be that entrepreneur that you're trying to be, right? It's exciting. But
so much. So much. I don't even know where to start. First of all, watching that video always gets to me. I don't know what it is. They just really put it together in a way that hits you in the feels. It really makes you grateful for how far you've come. And thank you for saying that it wasn't just luck, because I was like, man, that was so much grind behind the scenes.
So one of my favorite podcasts, Charlynda, is I listen to Guy Raz. He has a show called How I Built This. It's an amazing podcast. It talks about all kind of businesses, right? And Damon John was one of the earlier people he had on. But the one question he asked is how much was luck and how much was skill? He asks them all, right? And it's really interesting to hear the responses. But at the end of the day, I'm sure there's luck that plays into it. But you're in so many places that I think it's almost destined, right? I mean, I think that if you're not going out, if you're not at these locations to be recognized, to be seen, to be heard, you're not going to, because no one's coming to your door to knock on the door and say, hey, Damon John's outside. You know, I mean, it's just not one of those things that happens, right?
True. And that is great advice for anybody who's trying to figure out, well, how do I get in that room? Well, you have to open yourself up to opportunity. And you have to prepare for an eventual opportunity. If you don't have your ducks in a row, people can't help you if you don't have a foundation for them to help you. And on that level, he didn't know that I had been rejected at Shark Tank yet. At least there was no indication that he had any idea. But I felt the confidence to talk to him because inside I was like, I've already swam with the sharks. I am unafraid. But that was 4 years before I even met him. Mm-hmm. So you have to be ready. You have to arm yourself for eventual opportunities. So was it still amazing? Yeah. To get a phone call out of the blue from Damon John. Yeah. I cried. I fell out. I fell out. But I did. It does feel like, okay, this feels natural. This feels like the next thing I'm supposed to do. I can't tell you where I'm supposed to be 5 years from now. I have the vision boards. I have the better habits that I'm trying to build. But you can't really predict. You can really just be focused on sharpen the axe right now. That's my favorite phrase, sharpen the axe. That's from that quote from Abraham Lincoln. If I had to chop down a tree and had 6 hours, I'd spend 4 hours sharpening my axe.
It's a good quote. I never heard it before, but now I have. Oh, by the way, I wanted to make mention of my ignorance. You had said something in that video. I had to look up the word. I can't remember the word right now, but I'm going to remember it in a minute. I'll let you know. I'm just kidding. I didn't have to look it up, but it was good. It was a good word. I got it. So we actually ran into each other back in DC.
Yeah.
You did a keynote speech for the Military Influencer Conference, and I really enjoyed your speech. No doubt. I think the quote. I'm going to make it up right now because I don't have it in front of me. But I think you said something about rock bottom and a trampoline, right? You said something.
Yeah.
Do you remember it?
When you believe in something bigger than yourself, rock bottom has a trampoline.
Outstanding, and I love it. I love it, and more importantly, I watched you deliver that speech. I watched you before you delivered that speech, right? And I was like, man, she's ready. I mean, it's like watching you get prepared to speak in public was kind of like watching a bunch of NFL players before they play the Super Bowl, right? I mean, you're in the zone, you're getting ready, and you went out there and you delivered a hell of a speech.
I was having an anxiety attack.
Well, that too, but I wasn't going to say that. No, I'm kidding. You were good. It was great. We got to meet back then. I think it was August or September of 2019. It was shortly thereafter we did our first interview. But I was just amazed by your presence, right? About how you spoke about things, how you talked about things, your confidence that you had. But you could tell that it was like existential, right? I mean, because your belief in what you have, you need not, I don't want to say you don't have to bow down to people. You have the humility, but you're so confident in the manner in which you deliver it. And I just have to think to myself, based on our first conversation, when you were transitioning, and for those that are watching for the first time and didn't hear the first episode, there's a lot of stuff to unpack a little bit about her transition to begin with. But there was an 10-year active duty time in the Air Force, transition into the reserves. And then she became a government contractor, but there was a lot of thought that went into that, and a lot of things that delivered or were in her mind to get there. But man, you talk about having the confidence to walk out on certain things, and it seems as though that's what you do in life. And would you like to expound upon that as far as the way I mean, obviously there's things going on. We all have stories, and we all have stuff that are happening to us at that moment. But talk about the confidence that you had to exert as you were in the military in uniform, being in charge of folks. And then what you had to do when you left, whether it be through entrepreneurship, through contracting, through GS, through all of those different realms in which you traveled.
Well, yeah, I definitely would give credit to the Air Force for how they prepared me for entrepreneurship. Whether that's something that they know that they're good at. But when you step into your uniform, right, there's no, hey, you're 25 versus you're 35 versus whatever you look like, whatever your gender is, you're in this position, which means that you're qualified to do the job, and we expect you to get the job done. And walking in an organization that had that mindset made you kind of fearless. It's like, I don't have time for the nervous breakdown that I deserve. I have got to get this done. Nobody wants to hear you whine about what resources you don't have. You have to stretch out a nickel and turn it into $1. That was the flow for 10 years, just from one platform to another, from one program to another. I was a program manager, but it just seemed like you had the same mantra going forward. I'm not the smartest person in the room. I shouldn't be the smartest person in the room. That's why I have a team. I have to rely on my team if I'm going to get anything done. I have to rely on my team to get me smart on issues really fast. So there are things when you look at entrepreneurship where, I'm starting a sauce company. I don't know anything about tomato-based products, but I know that there's people out there that do. And I don't know anything about process authorities or lab testing or any of that, but all those things that we had to hone, those intangible things that we learned when we were on active duty, you will pick them up again. I can't say that I ever looked back and said, I need to use my aerospace degree or business management. Might not have had to pick up a book at all, but those things, yes.
So,
Most
so
definitely.
it's interesting because you were an acquisitions officer, which was relatively new at the time anyway. But you take that and you do your acquisition stuff in the Air Force. And I think that a lot of times we don't look at our job in the military, whether it be AFSC, MOS, or rate, or whatever the case may be, whatever service you're in. And I don't think we always look at that as how do we apply this to business. Obviously, we look at how do we apply that to our next role in our civilian life. If I'm an IT guy or gal, do I take this IT background and go into an IT field? It's probably easier that way, as
Mhm.
opposed to taking that IT thing and going into some random, like, I don't know, construction or acquisition for that matter.
Right.
But I think that we have a lot of people. There's three choices I think that people make. Do I want to retire fully because I'm financially stable? I'm good. I did all my savings, my TSP, my investments, blah 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 blah, whatever the case may be, and they just don't want to work. That's fine. Or employment or entrepreneurship, right? And when we choose the entrepreneurship route, I think that there's like, even for me, it's not something in which I had the money in my bank to sit there and finance a business through the ups, downs, ins and outs, and all the great stuff for the next 10 years because I wasn't a financially focused or stable individual.
Mhm.
So working was a must, right? So I knew that in order to fund my business, I had to work, right? And
Yeah.
so I know just by virtue of watching you through social media, having conversations sporadically throughout the course of a year, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and all that good stuff. But I know that you're not just 100% committed, not that you're not committed to your business, but you're having to do other things in the meantime. So I'd like to ask you a little bit about that, because I will tell you a lot of the people I know, they're stuck between a rock and a hard place as far as, I want to own a business, I want to run a business, but in order to run this business, I don't want to take that risk of
Right.
sleeping on someone's couch or eating ramen noodles for 6 years that you'll hear stories on Guy Raz's podcast. That they want to have an income because they have responsibilities that they have that are much more important than just their vision. How do you
Mhm.
manage that? How do you manage working as well as owning a business, and a productive one at that?
That is an awesome question. I'm so glad we're having this conversation because the reality is that you have mouths to feed. There's a family at home that you have to take care of. Most entrepreneurs are not just single. Sometimes they have a spouse that's on this journey with them. They have kids that they have to look after. We're in the middle of a pandemic right now. And so people understand the need for stability. And I love that people like Damon John and Gary Vee are finally speaking up and saying, well, let me tell you the behind the scenes of my journey. Damon John finally confessing, well, not finally, but he's being more public about the fact that he worked at Red Lobster while he built Fubu. It wasn't something he went all in immediately because he had taken equity out of his mom's house.
Mhm.
So he had to pay her back. And there's four founders. I heard that story, and when I left active duty, those bills started rolling in. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm doing good. And then after a couple months, you're like, oh my God, I'm bougie. Like my lifestyle was not adding up to the amount of sauce that I need to sell to maintain the same lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so immediately I looked at, well, if I don't tell anybody, I just work, I can live a comfortable life and keep grinding. So I was trying to find ways of working smarter with Mutt Sauce and to put processes in place that could accommodate the fact that I'm now this third shift entrepreneur. And there was a great book. Actually, I have it. Hold on. No, I don't. Just kidding. There's a book called Third Shift Entrepreneur, and it came out by the founder of Bunker Labs, Todd Connor, and because he wanted to debunk this stigma of being someone who works full time and then you're building your business in the off hours and the weekends. There's so many of us who are doing this, but you have to be practical. That's the word that Gary Vee used. You have to have some practicality about it. You're going to scale your company. There's so much foundation that you have to put in your company to make sure that it has scalability and that you can build an exit. But wouldn't you rather do that and be able to sleep at night, not thinking that I got to hustle and drive around in my car? There's time for that if you want to do that. But if you have the ability to manage both, which we do right now, you can work from home, you can do something virtual. I don't leave the house. People think, that I'm traveling around. I don't think I've left the house in like a year and a half.
And I believe that because I haven't seen any pictures, Charlynda, of you. I mean, because listen, for anybody that knows you, that's known you for some time, knows that before the pandemic, oh, Charlynda was a traveling fool. As a matter of fact, okay, I'm going to throw some honesty out there. I'm going to be very transparent, Charlynda. The last time we did our interview, you had just had surgery on both your feet, so you were laid out on the couch. As a matter of fact, the video that on my intro video, you're on the last part, and you're laid out on the couch because your feet are jacked up. But not there, you don't have jacked up feet. You just had.
Oh, I do. So briefly, they had to get fixed, and that was the only thing that was going to slow me down. Was you're literally going to have to saw into my feet and put me on bed rest, like
right. But it didn't slow you down because less than 2 weeks, I think 2 or 3 weeks after we had our interview, you were in Miami, and there was another picture of you and Damon John because you were at the 10X conference. Which for anybody that knows you were just out and you were everywhere, but you put yourself in positions to be successful. Right. I mean, I'm sure it was a little tiring, but I think that we know based on your history. While you're in the Air Force, you're going in early in the morning, leaving late at night, staying where you're working, you're doing a work. And then when you become an entrepreneur during that time, you're staying at work late at night, then getting home late at night and working on your business late at night and then through the weekend. So, and then now you add, baby David into the conversation and well, he's up, right? And we and we know how that goes because I got like 7 of them kids.
Yeah, that's right.
It feels like 7, right? But hey, real quick, I want to give a shout out, Salvatore. Hello, how you doing, Dana? Dana Hughes wrote her steps are ordered, right? And I love Dana. That's a retired Air Force chief right there. Love her to death. Thanks for stopping by, Dana. Justin says just ordered some sauce. Thank you for your service and continuing to support the military. That's a chief master sergeant in the Air Force who will be retiring soon. So I hope he gets some good information from here. And he's a smart guy. So employment is good, but he has the opportunity to be an entrepreneur himself. And before we actually go on to a lot of other things, because there's a little bit more I'd like to discuss from the support from the military for Mutt Sauce specifically, what I've seen from a bystander position is people ordering Mutt Sauce. I see it in different countries from different people who have ordered it. How have you been supported by the veteran community to this point? I mean, from a purchase perspective of your product.
Oh, it's been a dream. Everything since our first sale has been a dream come true. People like 4 Block. We recently did a cooking event with 4 Block where we took some MREs and the challenge was make a meal better with using Mutt Sauce. That was fun. That they support the community. We've had support from the base here at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. They put Mutt Sauce in their deli section. So we have a whole dedicated shelf of Mutt Sauce. Overall, I mean, military influencer conference, I feel like I have a whole history with them as a vendor, as a speaker, as an attendee. I just love the whole military influencer community. And, it's not just one branch. It's like all branches. I just feel like we've had this relationship that just gets stronger and stronger each year. And it kind of helps me build a bigger vision because at first I just wanted to sell a couple bottles. Now it's like, could we be the new sauce in your MRE? Is that possible?
That'd be amazing.
Right? Amazing. How could we serve the community better? That's all we want to do. Like we want to be we want to cement Mutt Sauce as part of the military community. And how do we do that?
It's interesting you say community. And I think what's phenomenal about you is you've created community wherever you've gone. And I look at the things that you've done over the span of a few years, but in the past year, actually 2 years, Dayton, Ohio has really been, everything to you from where you live to the people in which you share time with. And I see things in the Kroger, you got your stuff in the Kroger, but you're out there doing things at a community fair. I mean, you're just really involved in your community. Tell me a little bit about the community in Dayton, but there's some things that you're trying to accomplish. Mutt Sauce Across America, I think is what it's called. Give me a little bit of an idea of what that is.
Yeah. Well, Dayton has been great. And, I'm a Tennessee country girl, so I was very appreciative that they accepted my little country self and my family here. We're now considered Daytonians. So I love that they took the brand and basically said, this is an Ohio brand. They support us at all times. I do events. We just did a collaboration with a local brewery, and they had a distillery, and they have a bourbon that we made a special bourbon mutt sauce with. And we love to do local collaborations like that. But Mutt Sauce Across America, it came as a thought of our values, our family. We want to be a part of the American household conversation. We want to actually instill that camaraderie within your home, whether you're at home with friends, maybe you're, held up with all your college roommates during the pandemic. However it is, we want to make sure that we're part of that togetherness. But when I was looking at the demographics using the back end of our website, I'm like, we have not covered the whole US. Like, we're not in every US state. We have not sold a package all over America. So how are we America sauce? Like, I want to be able to confidently say that. Mm-hmm. So that's our vision for 2022 is Mutt Sauce Across America. I bought this giant map, Jeffrey. I got my push pins. I am ready. We're going to use the power of YouTube, which I've started a YouTube journey, but I also want to start one with Mutt Sauce where I connect with people and say, are we in your home? What can we do to help make things better? Those moms, I definitely feel the pandemic moms. Like, how can we make mealtime easy? How can we just make life easy? Or, what can we do to help all you pandemic parents?
That's awesome. And so I'm going to tell you something interesting. So Military Murder Podcast, that's a shout out for anybody that likes murder mystery type stuff, like Snapped or any of those shows, but Military Murder Podcast. It's an awesome podcast. And what I watched when she was growing it, right? Margot is she's an Air Force veteran as well. And she was doing this as she was building, like you listen to the first episode and she's like, it's my first episode. Great storyteller, by the way. It's an amazing podcast. Yeah. But as she went to next episode and the next episode, she talked about, well, I'm in, 3 of 50 states. And she counted it off. And it was amazing because as fast as she was podcasting, we got to follow where she's at. And listen, she went from 3 of 50 to 50 of 50 and then beyond, in a very, very short order. She's killing it. But I say that to say I like the idea. I want to tell all of you that are watching real quick that Charlynda and I have talked about podcasts and YouTube channels well before our first interview back 2 years ago. So I want to say congratulations. It's about time, but more important, but it takes time. And I know I understand sometimes the angst, understanding what is the message. And I want to get into the message, but there's a couple things that I want to ask before we get into what the YouTube channel is about. There was something that was pretty interesting. You were highlighted in a Damon John book, Power Shift. I want to ask, because it's going to lead on to the next couple things that we talk, but listen, I'm just telling you, you talked about falling out when Damon John called you. Listen, if he calls me right now, I have nothing to offer him, but it would be a great phone call. So I might do some online tiers too. And I'm not an emotional dude, but that's a phone call out of the blue and then some mentorship along the way. And now all of a sudden I'm in this book about Power Shift. Tell me about how that came about. What is it about? And how does where can people find the book? Because it's a great book. I'm going to post that link to the book in the comments so people can go on and get it, because it is a great book.
I do have that one. I can show that one. Hold on.
That's it.
So Power Shift, I was shocked. Honestly, anytime I interact with him, I'm genuinely shocked. We're not one of those interactions where it's like every day or very often. He's very much I'm gonna check in randomly and see how are you doing. He doesn't tell you specifically what you need to be doing. It's like, I want you to know that I'm watching, and that for me is enough. That's enough. No doubt. This book came out the week that my son was born, which was very interesting because we had no idea that a global pandemic was headed our way. And the book was about how people have taken adversity and they've used it to their advantage. And at this point, we had talked about how I had gotten rejected at Shark Tank. He got word, oh my gosh, she was on Shark Tank. Why did she say anything? Like, what did she didn't give up. So he was so blown away by the fact that You kept going. Most people, that is the ultimate goal. I just want to get on Shark Tank. I want to get a deal. And they don't get a deal, and they give up on their entrepreneurial dreams. But I found purpose in that. And I don't know if I've ever stated this way, but I don't know. I get just this thing with rejection. It's almost like fuel. It's almost like jet fuel for me. I'm like, oh no, I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
I don't get a deal. I'm going to show you. So I won't say anything, but it makes me want to grind so hard. So I got the rejection, and I took their advice. They basically said, you need to keep going. You have a great product. You've only been in business for 6 months. Holy cow. I mean, 35,000 people try to get here. And I just internalized that as I was supposed to get that advice to help me push this thing forward, to propel it forward. And that's what he put in the book. That's what he talked about, was this is a rejection story that turned into a success story. And I want you to see that not everybody gets a deal. This is what you can do with a rejection.
Sure. Oh, it's amazing. And I actually saw the interview with you and him. It was cool because you actually introduced your son to him over the in the interview, and it was really good. And another thing, if you go back to the video I played in the beginning, I think it tells a huge story about him and you and the personality that he has, because I can see him intently listening to the words you're saying, right? Obviously the camera's there. It's not propped. They're walking around, because I've been in these events many times where they're just taking snaps, and you're talking to Damon John, right? And that's, I think a lot of times we look at someone who is going to be talked at or talked to by that mentor type person, but he was intently listening to what you were saying, which goes a long way. That's huge in general from a transition perspective. I just want to throw it out there, because I think that a lot of times we are intimidated going into certain realms in which we're not comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the walk in confidence and understanding who you are and the value you bring to that organization or individual, it's important. So it's kind of like a mind game. It's a mindset shift. It's a little bit of a difference, but we have to have that confidence going through it.
Mm-hmm.
So you talk about, I mean, being in the book, you're there. I think it's an amazing accomplishment, even if it was a surprise to you, right? But it's still really cool. But I don't know where I was going to say something, and I swear on everything holy, I could hear my daughter out of the room. That's not professional, but I thought she was going to come barging. She's a 2-year-old. I'm not going to stop her either, because but her mom got her. I hear. But yeah, neither here nor there. I'll remember what I was going to say in about 13.2 seconds.
Well, I was going to say that I was a little nervous when I talked to Gary Vee. You brought that up, and I was a little nervous only because you had to stand in this long line, and he's very unpredictable. So I don't know if I'm about to get eaten alive or what. I know there's going to be F-bombs maybe, but because it was there were veterans in the room, I think he was a little bit more tame because of the environment. But I remember it was him and Matt Higgins, who was a guest shark. And when I told my story, I said, I don't know if I want to continue getting in stores, but it's been really difficult to scale in grocery stores. I hadn't really looked at e-commerce. And Matt Higgins, he interjected. He's like, it just sounds like you don't really want this. And I was like, excuse me? Like, that threw me off. And Gary said something very interesting. He said, she sounds like she's going 100 miles an hour, but she's going in the wrong direction. And so I wanted to provide that as encouragement to some entrepreneurs who've been grinding, they've been going at it, and they think they're not making any progress. It's like, you might make progress if you go in a different direction with it. And whenever the book came out for Power Shift, I did not know that the very next week, I'm giving birth to my son, and there's a pandemic, and every single thing that I booked for that entire year got canceled. So you're looking at, I'm doing well financially to I have zero, like absolutely no money, coming in. I don't know how we're going to have money coming in, but right now the number is 0 and I have a newborn. So that, he said you were going in the wrong direction. I had not started the e-commerce store that he told me I should have started. I had not taken any of Gary's advice that he told me to take a year prior. Had he done that, I would have been sweating bullets like I was in March of 2020. So I have had my startup hat when it comes to Mutt Sauce. I basically feel like I've rebuilt the entire company during the pandemic. So what people see is me putting my student hat on, saying, all right, well, this is now, it went from being a mainly retail grocery business to we're an e-commerce business. And how do I build a foundation, build all the processes that need to be in place? How do I price this again? Everything from scratch.
No doubt. And I remember in the interview, they talked about, I think it was Higgins that said, because he was building you up on how to sell your business. And Gary was like, well, she doesn't sound like she doesn't want to sell it. So you don't want to sell it, right? And you were like, no, I'm all in, right? And that's when he had talked about the e-commerce portion, which was an interesting thing. And it almost, when the camera panned back to you, it's like it's just like this wheel started turning, right? Because it was like a never thought of concept. And
think about it.
Maybe a year before it would have been beneficial to listen and gone through last year with that level of I guess you'd say safety, because it was already out there. But to be able to actually action it now and putting yourself out there now, it may suck, but Mutt Sauce is still going, and you're still thriving. You know what I mean? I don't know too many people that put their financial business out there when it comes to business. To me, it's irrelevant. I really don't care. I never will care. Because at the end of the day, when I see a light still on and the open light is still blinking, you're doing just fine. That's my take. I don't really care about the ins and outs, revenue, and all that stuff.
That's a blessing these days to be able to stay in business. Even
doubt.
in this area, we've noticed so many, especially the food and beverage industry, just got demolished.
I'm telling you, a lot of the food and beverage, especially from restaurants, in-home or in-person restaurants, a lot of those mom and pop shops struggled early, and some are making their way back, and some will never open again, and it's a shame. But it's definitely taking a hit. But hey, good thing for Justin Cook and people like him that are purchasing product. I'm gonna have to listen, Charlynda. I said I was gonna do it. James Van Pruyen, he bought some, and I was supposed to buy it with him, and I didn't. I failed miserably. So on live TV, on my next interview next Wednesday, when I'll have Bill Kiefer on here, I will show you. So if you tune in, you'll see I'll have my Mutt Sauce in hand, and we'll use it to cook. So let's talk a little bit about the YouTube channel and what it is that you're bringing to people, why you created one, because it's been time. I remember having a brainstorming session with you a little bit, just about what we could talk about. What would I talk about? I could do this, I could do that. And I think one of the gems about you, one of the things that people will never see, right, unless they've experienced it, is that the amount of effort you've put into other entrepreneurs within the veteran space, because that you've helped so many go to their pitch contests, right? You've had these conversations with, well, you should present this or do that, and you've actually mentored quite a few veterans in our community. But now that's not what we're talking about in the YouTube channel. So tell me, YouTube channel, why we're doing it, what we're going to gain from it, and when I subscribe, every time you put a video up, it's going to pop up, and I'm going to do what?
You're going to learn how to level up your life or business by changing your habits. I know it seems really simple, but I see so many people focus on, are you going to reach your goals, goal setting this, and by the middle of the year, sometimes not even that long, you've already fallen by the wayside. Like you've already given up. And for me, there were so many things that swim around in my head that I want to accomplish. I have the vision, but I've been trying to figure out, how do I feel more confident that I can do these things? They seem, once I put them on paper, they just seem so big. Like, this is too big. And I will get the imposter syndrome, and I will give up before I've even started. There is that part of me that just is at war. You should do this. No, I can't do that. I can't do that. And it's because there were the little habits that were making it impossible, that I had not addressed those things. So it made the goal seem impossible. impossible to accomplish. And I read this book by James Clear. I know it came out in like 2016, Atomic Habits, but when I read it, I'm like, holy crap. Like, this is it. Like, this is what's missing. And I need to get over myself, and I just need to tackle these little things. And so when I started looking at the little things day to day, I could see where in my businesses and in my life, that's what was wreaking havoc on the big goals. And he said, stop thinking about the make $1 million a year, lose 50 pounds, get the Bugatti. Like, stop thinking about those big things. Think about, do you have $1,000 in savings? Like, do you have a self-care routine? Do you sleep more than 8 hours? Like, are you doing that? Do that first.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to break it down into what are the actions that I can take, the little habits that I can change that will make me feel more confident that I can go after the big things. So
outstanding. So listen, for you folks that are having a struggle with the big things, and because you're not looking at the little things, subscribe to Charlynda's YouTube channel. I'm going to post it in the comments so you can. But check this out. So David Goggins wrote a book. As a matter of fact, it came out I think a couple of weeks before we talked, or I'd read it or finished it a couple of weeks before we talked. Can't Hurt Me. And I want to tell you, it's everything in which, I mean, that's made millions of changes, right, in people's lives, and because he's so him. I don't think everybody can come off the same way David Goggins comes off and be successful at what they're doing, because not everybody can receive David Goggins in that manner.
yeah.
I think at the end of the day, though, he touches people, he impacts lives in a positive way. And I think a lot of that has to do with mindset, whether it be goal changing or habit forming or whatever the case may be. And I think that what you're doing is so spot on. It's needed because there's a target market that's out there and someone's going to find you. And listen, I'll tell you right now, I think for me, you'd be much easier to listen to than David Goggins, because I get emotional when he talks to me. I feel like actually putting my thumb in my mouth and crying in a fetal position. No, I'm kidding. It's
Right? He'll get to the core, but he's like, no excuses. He's like, I don't want to hear it. I want to hear what you can't do.
No doubt.
And the fact that he has that testimony that's so powerful, you're like, yeah, I mean, the dude shows you. He's already showed you. He's not just paying you lip service. I hope that people get a different perspective, because there are a lot of people on YouTube who've talked about habits and daily routine and things like that. What I'm trying to bring to the table is, you have the perspective of a military veteran, you have the perspective of a pandemic parent, you have the perspective of someone who has multiple companies. So I have 3 companies. I have 2 for-profits and a nonprofit. I don't talk about the other 2, but that's just me doing my quiet goodwill. That's what I want to do. But I have the perspective of trying to manage all these things. I don't subscribe to balance. So I do subscribe to good communication. So the people who are going to be affected by your journey, let them know, have them on your side. Don't let it be something where you've accomplished your goals and they're looking at you resentful over in the corner, like, yeah, well, go you.
No doubt. Hey, I want to throw this up. Justin Cook says, what is the biggest difference in leading a company versus leading in the Air Force? I want to hear your perspective, because I remember a conversation we had in the past, and I just want to see how it shapes up now, because it's years in the making.
One thing that I'm noticing now is like structure. There's so much structure in the Air Force. There's regulations that kind of keep you in check. There's accountability from a command structure. The hardest part that I had was kind of policing myself and building the accountability. I have to build in accountability partners. So there's a lot of self-policing that was difficult for me to do, because I was so used to people saying, be here, go TDY here, that, you don't really have to control a whole lot. But you do I do like the fact that I can carry the same core values into entrepreneurship. That is really great. And I think that pays dividends. That shows a big difference between the veteran entrepreneurs and just regular civilian entrepreneurs, is because you have that foundation of ethics and morals that you would think everybody has, but good gosh, like, and that's
Just
what
not
I
there.
think that every veteran is ethical. Some of us take our uniform off and we're just like, out of sight, out of mind. You just completely forgot, didn't you? Um, but and there are those, and you just have to have discernment. But for me, yeah, I miss the structure of the Air Force. I love the core values that did carry over though.
Yeah. I think what's interesting, Charlynda, about our previous conversation we had, I remember the conversation. I can't remember if it was during our podcast or if it was just when having a conversation, whether it was in person or over the phone. I remember talking to you about employees and when you got employees, what did you hire them for? And one of the things that you said was personality. And I think that might be a little different than what you can do in the military. And what I mean by that is obviously you have people that are assigned to you in the military. From an employer perspective, that's something that I don't think a lot of veterans really grasp at first. Is we talk about qualifications for a job, we're always looking to see what the job description says. What are the requirements? We look for the PMP, or do they have their bachelor's or master's or doctorate?
Yeah.
What is the requirement? But I don't think we often look at what do we bring from a personality perspective into this group, this team, because we want a cohesive unit moving forward, and we have the opportunity to choose in this world who is surrounding us, as opposed to in the military where you don't get that choice. And I mean, do you still think that holds true now, when you talk about, I can bring a salesperson in that has really not a lot of experience with sales, but if they have a really warm personality that will get out to the community and reach out to the community and be able to sell our product based on who they are, is that still something that rings true for today for you as it did when we had that conversation years ago?
Absolutely, Jeffrey. And even now, like my identity as a YouTube personality is the like-hearted mentor, because I don't subscribe to like-mindedness. I subscribe to like-heartedness. I want you to find like-hearted people. And then you're going to work in my organization or in any of my companies. I need for you to be someone who doesn't think like me. It cannot be the Bay of Pigs. You cannot all have this group think. Because you're not going to learn, you're not going to evolve, you're not going to grow as a leader if everyone agrees with you. And if you want people surrounding you that all of them have, like, your cheek marks on their lips, like, you need someone to say you're wrong, or have you thought of something this way? You should give e-commerce a real chance. I didn't have someone on me at that point saying, that was great advice. Like, you need to listen to that.
Mhm.
And, it is what it is right now. Like, I was able to take the advice later on. I want to make sure that as I grow an organization or have anyone around me, that they share those same values, that I can look at you and say, you carry ethics in, a high regard, carry morals in a high regard. You care about treating people with dignity and respect. And when people see you, you can tell that you're family centered, like we're family centered in Mutt Sauce. Not to say I wouldn't have like a Gary Vee in my organization, but if he were to be a representative, he would not be throwing F-bombs because children watch what we're doing. Like, it's kind of our thing. So I want people to be able to be different in how they think, but share the same values. Have your heart in the same place that I do as a founder.
That's outstanding. I love it. I mean, and I think that we get that a lot when we start looking at big organizations, small organizations, mom and pop shops, whatever it may be. They all have mission statements, value statements, and all that good stuff. And I think through conversations, you actually can tell if that company believes that. I mean, if that's what's preached around there. There's a lot of great organizations that are out there, big ones and small ones, that say what they feel, what their values are, and they follow those values. You could tell it from every employee that's in it. And then there's the ones that say that they do this, but they're not. So, but I love the idea of like-hearted versus like-minded. I think that's huge. One of my biggest struggles in business to begin with, Charlynda, is when I left the military, I wasn't I'm not the sergeant major of the Army. I wasn't, but I was far removed from doing the work, right? I was more into the supervision, the visionary type thing, letting people know what's happening from above. And this is what we need to do. And people would make it look beautiful. And the one thing that I struggled as a solopreneur when I first started doing any business type stuff is that I could have all these wonderful ideas, all of them, the grandest vision. When it came to execution, I still am. I'm struggling. I struggle in that realm. I'm doing much better than I now today than I was 4 years ago. But
Mhm.
I failed in the vision to execute the vision. So I realized that I need help, right? I needed to go out there and seek somebody that wasn't necessarily looking for that $150,000 job, but that was looking for, hey, listen, I love your passion, I love your vision, I want to help you. Let me ask you that question, because a lot of people that are starting business,
Mhm.
um, a lot of times they don't know where to get employees because they don't have the capital yet to go out and get an employee, because they don't have 85K in their bank account to say, here, 85K employee.
Yeah.
How did you manage before you started having influx of revenue
Yeah.
to actually have people work with you?
Well, it's been a blessing. I've had a few interns and that I had augmented as my executive assistants that really helped me because those emails start rolling through, and I've learned that I have an attention problem. I wouldn't say attention problem. I would say I'm neurodivergent. That's the new phrase. I guess they're calling it is neurodivergency. You're either neurotypical and you can do things with such focus and grace. And there's us who everything looks like a squiggly line. And so, but I mean, still gets done. Get to point A to point B, but it just looks a little more adventurous.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm with you, by the way, except for my squiggly line probably looks a lot crazier than your squiggly line, because I'm still trying to get to B, by the way. I'm
right,
at A,
right.
going around circling it.
So the executive assistants helped me look like I had it together, and that's a testament to how great they were, because they would get in that inbox and they would clean things up. So I had college interns that I used. I found out about the DoD Skill Bridge program, which is something as a business owner you can sign up to be a DoD Skill Bridge participant. And what happens is they would match you to a profile of a outgoing military person who's going to be transitioning out, and they need to acquire skills that your company can provide. And it was really surprising to me. I've had two skill bridge veterans, and one of them said I had a choice between Pepsi and mud sauce. And I didn't know where I would be in Pepsi because I have so many people. I thought I'd be riding a desk, but I figure I can get my hands dirty if I work with a small business. So she chose to work with me. Man, Jeffrey, I had her all over the place. Like we were on the news. She's like, we're going to the news station. We're going to the news station. We're going to do a cooking show. We're going to do. So I wanted her to see, because she wanted to transition out to be an entrepreneur in the food and beverage industry. I was like, you need to know the real life. I want you to know what it's like on the good days. I want you to be out in the heat at a festival with me so you could understand this. And like, you're selling sweet tea, it's summertime. You need to get out here, get on this booth. So in the end, did she was like, I'm postpone that. But had had she just was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to take my savings and I'm going to dive head first into it. Where would she be? She's more stable now, and she has that experience on her belt to know that this is what I'm going to get into when I decide to do that.
It's
But
awesome.
she worked with me for 6 months, bless her heart. And then I had a military spouse who was my executive assistant. So I got her through the network of mil spouses on base, and that was really great because she had that understanding of how my military mind works. But at the same time, she's a civilian, so she's like, let me give it to you straight. Like she's very like-hearted. She's like, I don't agree with you at all.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so the DoD Skill Bridge Handshake is a great app that you can get college students to work for you. And over time, I had to augment third party. So whether it was Upwork or peopleperhour.com or Fiverr for different graphic design, because there were times when I wanted to use my really good designers, and there's a time I just didn't have the budget for it, but I still needed it to get done.
Yep.
So those resources helped me get that third party work. And I think that's that runs the gamut of all the extra help that I got. I've been told by several people you need a virtual assistant right now, because now I have 3 companies and I have no admin at all.
That's a call for help for anybody watching. If you're looking to be a virtual assistant, reach out to Charlynda.
Well, here I've done several sessions with them, and what it came down to is like I kind of had to sharpen the axe a little bit as a founder to make sure when they walk in that they're set up for success. Like you just don't want to hand them a pile of papers and say, there you go. And walk. So I don't want it to be that kind of setup. So I have to do a little bit of organization on my end, like slowly but surely. And when the foundation is there for someone to come in and be successful at being a virtual assistant, I think I'll be ready then.
It's outstanding. I'll tell you, it's just interesting when you're around folks, when you get around people. I mean, military creator kind of wearing the shirt, we jumped into Podfest and got to get around a bunch of veterans that are doing podcasting and YouTube and online content creation, and the amount of things and resources and that just third party stuff that exists, right? So you can get rid of it, right? Because it's something that I can be good at it if I took time to be good at it, but being good at that thing is not what I'm trying to be. So hire someone that's good at it if you can find the budget within it. So because time is not replaceable, right? And when you're talking about being up and down and all around, and not only just being a business owner of 3 businesses, but being a daughter, a mother, a homeowner, there's things that are happening, and there's people that are looking at it. By the way, I don't understand, and for the life of me, I'm telling you this, I do not understand how you find time to do the million other things that you're doing. And I do want to tell a quick story, Charlynda, and just I want you to validate this story. So I remember being in Orlando when you were down here. I think it was Orlando. Was it Orlando or DC? It was Orlando. It was Orlando, and you were in the mix, at the area in the military influencer conference. And you're talking to people, blah 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 blah. And I drove home that night, and I was sitting there, and next thing I know, I see that you're in like some newsroom. Like, I mean, you were doing an interview at the news channel in Orlando, and it's just those things that make you different because you're there. You're putting yourself in positions to be found. I mean, and it's as a matter of fact, I think I told you, I said you should be working at the news. Much Sauce is great, but that's where you should be at, because you spoke you spoke more eloquently than the news person. It was hilarious to me because that was Orlando, right?
It was Orlando, and it's so funny because Cortez, he told me, it's like, I want you to work with this gentleman, and he's gonna kill me because he's probably gonna see this and like, say my name. But he coached me on the way to the news station. He's like, this is how long you have to speak, and this is what you need to speak about. And in this time, you need to name drop as many organizations that are at Military Influencer Conference, the sponsors, all these people as possible. Here is the list. So I'm trying to memorize the list on the way. And then he's like, oh yeah, you can talk about your product too. Make sure you say these names.
Well, so, hey, big props to Cortez, by the way. I mean, we have mentioned.
That's his name, Josh Elledge from Up My Influence.
That's right, Josh Elledge. I remember. Okay, I remember meeting him there, but he didn't want me to come and speak at his news channel. No, I'm kidding. I remember Josh. He's a great guy. He's out of Orlando. But I do want to give props to Cortez Riggs. I mean, we've brought up Military Influencer Conference several times during this conversation, but he's done some great things, and best of luck to him. So I'm just giving him a big shout out. I try to make mention of as many veteran-owned veterans that are doing great things in the space as I can during these type of shows, just to give people the opportunity to go look them up. Cortez Riggs, check them out. Yeah. Anyway, so I asked you a question the last time you were here, and I'm going to ask you it again, except for I'm going to give you your answer from the last time. So if you do mention it again, it's fine. I'll help you out. I said, hey, give me one word of advice for a transitioning service member that's going to get into, or not one word, but one piece of advice, whether they're going to go into entrepreneurship or into employment, but they're stepping out of the military. And you said, I hate the word resilience, but we are a resilient group, and we're persistent, and we keep the grind moving. That's that's a paraphrase. So let's not go back in time and try to quote me on it. I didn't say it properly, but it was close. Yeah. What now? After you've been separated a little bit, you're still doing reserve time at this time?
Yes.
Yes, you are. You're doing it. And I'm sure your job has changed a million times since the acquisitions job. Because I think when you first got out, you were doing reserve time in DC. Are you still doing reserve time in DC?
No, I do everything out of Wright-Patterson in Ohio.
Much easier. What's your new job?
So I'm senior program management support for the simulators section on the base. So they have training simulators for
Yeah.
flight or whatever.
Yeah, you were doing. Listen, I remember. I have like a brain of an elephant, not really, but I remember your acquisitions. Then you went into like presidential event type planning stuff,
Yeah,
right?
that was so crazy. I showed up at Andrews and they're like, "Yeah, you're going to do security for the presidential election." I'm like, "What?"
Yeah, it's crazy.
I've
And now
uh,
we shifted.
I've been a contingency officer for like a day. Okay, no problem. And that was the year that they had the Women's March. So it was you had to do that and the Women's March because they didn't know what was going to happen at the Women's
Sure.
March. So, yeah, but now I'm back
Okay.
in acquisitions, program management, back in right.
Outstanding. So now you've got 2 years have gone by. You talk
Uh-huh.
about resilience. Obviously, I'm not going to let you use it again, only because resilience has had to be kept through the pandemic, and you've added an addition to your life. I know your family is so very important to you. I see it all the time, and I love it. What has anything changed in your mind as far as what is something that would stick out to you now, as far as the piece of advice you'd give?
Yeah, well, my son, I feel like transformed me as a person. And my whole journey to being a mother, I always wanted to be a mom. And I did have a infertility journey that I went through as a previously married person. And as when I was single, still having that desire to be a mother, not knowing if it would be possible. I just turned 40 this past year. So when it worked the first time, going through the whole thing by myself, I was stunned. I'm like, holy cow, I did not know that you could feel this way. I can't even describe it. Jeff, you have 7 children. So it's really indescribable, that feeling that there's going to be someone, a part of this world that is biologically a part of you. Um, but resilience, yeah, I wouldn't say it's resilience as my focus lately. It really is think about your why. Think about why you're doing this. Meditate on that every day because I said legacy is my why, but it wasn't until I saw the ultrasound and finally held him in my arms. I was like, this is everything. I don't care what I got to do. Nobody's going to shame me about if I have to work 4 jobs. I don't care. But as long as this child is healthy, happy, stable, as long as my parents who moved in with me when I got to Ohio, as long as they are healthy, happy, and stable, I will work out. I'm the breadwinner of the family, and they don't really give me much grief about all the things I'm doing because they know that that is what brings me joy. Them being comfortable is my joy.
Mhm.
And I don't plan to grind forever, but they know that that is my focus right now. I will grind as long as I have to so that we can enjoy life while we're still alive, and we're going to get through this time of this pandemic together. And I would advise that people communicate with the people that are in your family. You don't want it to be something where you're going, oh, I will remember this person, this, or that. They're still here. You need to be talking to these people while they're here. This is a bittersweet time to be bonding with people you wouldn't have had the opportunity to bond with before because you're on airplanes and in hotels and going 100 miles an hour. You've been given a strategic pause. And how you use that is up to you, but the pause is not going to last forever.
So use it wisely. Hey, so I'm going to tell you, you were so yeah, I have a bunch of kids, and we all know that we've established that, and I've watched the pregnancies, which is always wonderful for me because I'm not pregnant. I look, there's rough. I mean, look, I'm being blunt. I mean, brutally honest, but there's times where you can see the discomfort, you can see the happiness, you can see the excitement, you can see the frustration. I mean, all those emotions that go through the women that are doing this, right? I'm just like, what can I do? Please, for the love of God. But I will tell you through your journey. I mean, I remember obviously you were kind of hush hush about your situation and what you were doing. I remember when you told me it was latter. It was right before you found out. I mean, I think that you found out that you were pregnant, and you told me about it maybe only a few weeks before, because then I saw you at the Military Influencer Conference, and then you kind of dropped the
Yeah.
hints, right? Which was cool. But from that moment, we got to watch your journey on through Facebook and things, and you were a very, I mean, you obviously you handled it very well, and you were, you're emotional about the whole thing, but you showed it, and it was great. It was a good time for us to watch. You put a post on Facebook what day, yesterday. Was it yesterday? Today's Thursday, Wednesday, so yesterday or Monday. Either way, I want to close on this quote that you wrote, and I'm not going to quote it right again because I paraphrase everything, because my memory might be good as an elephant, but I don't get things exactly right. But you said something in regards to, you are what you do, not what you say you do. And I'll tell you, that resonated with me like nothing in which I've read in a long time, right? Because I'll tell you, I'm a career readiness instructor with 4Block. I've been doing that now for 4 years. I love that organization, and I'll always speak highly of it. And we talk to transition and service members regularly. I talk to business owners. I am a business owner, and whether I'm doing it well or not, it's interesting because I wrote on something that I'm an author. I had told you 2 years ago I was writing a book. I'm still writing a book, by the way. So it's not because I'm an author. I'm trying to be one, but it's taken me an awful long time. So to say I am what I do, not what I say I'm going to do, it's one of those things that's a realization. And I think that to me is huge advice, not just for someone who's in a rut or someone that's going out there saying they're all these things, but I look at transition and service members as, as we talk to them about, opportunities that exist, because everybody's a program manager, everybody's an operations manager, everybody wants to be the things that they really don't know what they mean outside of the military. But what do you want to do? And when you do want to do it, speak it into existence, but do it. Don't just say you're going to do it. Look at all the things that you've done throughout your military career. Articulate that in a manner that someone who's never touched or swore to defend the Constitution of the United States or been around military folks, articulate that in a manner that they know what you do, so you can speak to it genuinely without having to make it up as you go, right? But I love that quote, and I appreciate you putting it out there, because it actually matters. So if you're looking for an accountability coach for anybody, just so you know, Charlynda will, I pointed down as if you're down there, but you're over here. So Charlynda will be that. So I appreciate you as always. I appreciate you taking your time to talk to us. I appreciate being your first podcast of 2022. It was your first podcast of 2019 too, so I'm winning there. But before you go, anything, I'm going to leave the floor open to you. I know we talked about stuff that you're doing. We didn't talk about everything you're doing, because we'd be here until 3 a.m. because I can't believe you do half the things you do. But I'm going to give you this time and take as long as you desire. Tell me anything you want. I mean, anything that you want people to know, or anything that we should know.
Well, I just appreciate you, Jeffrey. I mean, I appreciate you for your service. I appreciate you for you continue to give back to this community, and you're a great friend to me. And I just love the fact that you've opened up your time, which is the most valuable thing you have, to highlight people's journeys in hopes that we help other people. And that's all I really want to do. Is like, I'm trying to be more transparent. So if that helps somebody, you never know. The things that you want to like shove under a carpet and not talk about, somebody's waiting to hear that. Somebody's stuck, and they need to hear that that's normal, or that's okay. That rejection is okay, and someone else is going through what you've been through. And thank you for building this platform. Thank you for being such a great friend.
You're awesome, and you're welcome. And I'll tell you, I find that to be a huge point of emphasis that people fail to realize. We live in like a microwave society now, where everything's like instant, and we see the goodness, right? And I think one of the wonderful things about military services, I can almost guarantee you. I know I'm not going to almost guarantee you. I'm going to guarantee you. If I went to the Air Force and I took a room full of airmen, and I went to the Army and I took a room full of soldiers and Marines and sailors, 10 or 20 of them, put 1,000 of them in each room, it wouldn't matter. I'm going to hear a different story. There may be similarities amongst things based on demographics or where they grew up, from the cities that they're from, and blah, 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 blah. But I'm going to hear different stories from everybody. And the thing about everybody's story is there is a fall point. There is a fail point. there is something that is, they think they call it the ugly baby. Like no one wants to show someone the ugly baby. I've heard that saying. I don't think it's proper, but anyway, at the end of the day, we all have that. And it's interesting that sometimes when we have Instagram or Facebook or whatever social media platform, we show the accomplishments, the achievements, and we don't see the back end of that. The 3 o'clock in the morning, having a baby on your belly and sitting there typing. Like, I mean, that you've had live videos with, right, that we've seen, but we all have those things. And I think that when people, I think you're 100% accurate that if people can see our fallible moments and those moments that we're not 100% achieving, we don't have the Gary V conversation or the book that has our name in it. They might just find themselves understanding that we might be in the same position. And when you were in that position, how did you get out of it? And it becomes, we can become very transparent and then help those ones to get through those hard times. I'm going to do a little bit better of putting out my not so good moments, because I share my family and I share the things that are cool. I get to share this. I get to have great conversations with wonderful people, but there's some things where I struggle. And I think being more transparent, it will be helpful to those, not just the ones that I'm sitting here saying, look at Charlynda. She's great. Look at me. I love the Bills and the Yankees, and I don't like Clemson. I'm just kidding. I don't dislike Clemson. I'm just an SEC type guy. But yeah,
look,
I think a little bit more.
Can't talk. We were in the Cheez-It Bowl this year, so I was like, y'all.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the fact that you're in a bowl and not the toilet bowl was good. Hey, but there'll be more years. Clemson is a great school, great program. I actually don't dislike Clemson whatsoever. Hey, but Charlynda, I'll tell you what, I appreciate you. We spent, I don't want to take any more of your time because I do know you're busy. Hey, if you guys are interested, I again, in the comments, I'll put some stuff where you can find her, where you can see her, where you can listen, because she's got powerful messages and she's doing great things in our community and for the veteran community and for the other communities that exist. Yes. And listen, if you're not in Florida, because a lot of y'all are in Florida, you're friends of mine and I live here, but listen, we want mud sauce across America. So listen, if you know anybody that's in a different state than you are, reach out to them, have them order mud sauce. I'll put the website in the comments. So order mud sauce because it's great. And Charlynda, it's a promise. Next week on Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to have in my hand mud sauce before I bring out my guests so we can talk. But I appreciate you greatly. Hey, good luck to you and everything you're doing. And if you ever need help, don't call me because I can't help. No, I'm kidding. I can always help. You know, I'm just teasing you. But whatever I can do, but you're awesome, and I appreciate you.
Thanks, hon.
All right. You have a great night. For all of you that are out there watching, thanks for your time. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you learned a lot. And if you did, comment, like, share, do all that good stuff. Subscribe. I got a YouTube channel, all that great stuff. I don't really care where you hear me. Doesn't matter as long as you hear me, because that means that you're getting great information from people like Charlynda. Next week, we have Bill Kiefer. It's going to be a great show. So I hope to see you next week, Wednesday. What's today? The 12th. So it's the 19th of January, 2022. I almost messed that up completely, but there is no editing. This is all live, and I'm allowed to make mistakes because I'm fallible. I'm just kidding. All right. We'll see you next week on the other side.